Hello everybody! Welcome to Creating the Basic Adaptable Game Engine Library, Part 4, Vector Class Design. So in previous videos in this series, we've talked about the core classes that we'll need to create a very simple game. In order for our sprites to move around the screen, we'll store information like its position in a class called Vector. And in the last few videos, we talked about some of the mathematical formulas we might need when we're creating this class. Before we dive into the programming, let's spend a minute talking about the different methods we'll need in this class for all the different purposes that we'll use it for in these games. So here is the Java documentation page. These files can be generated by adding comments to our classes. And so this will tell us all about the class vector that we will start to program in the next video. So vectors will just be two-dimensional objects. They'll store an x and a y coordinate. So let's go take a look at the details of each of the elements of the class. The vector class will really only need to store two pieces of information, two doubles named x and y. We'll leave these as public variables for convenience, but we'll typically access them through a set of different methods. We'll set up two constructors for this class. We'll have a default constructor, which will initialize both x and y to 0. We will also have a parameterized constructor for this class, which will take in values for x and y and set the class variables to those values. Some of the methods that we'll see. First, we'll probably create a set values method. You could set the values of x or y independently because they're public variables. But this method, set values, will let you set both x and y at the same time. One thing we'll often need to do is add to the components of the vector object. And we'll set up two methods which will allow us to add to these values in two different ways. We'll have an add values method, which will add numbers dx and dy to the x coordinate and y coordinate. But also for convenience, we'll also have a method called add vector, which adds the components of another vector to this vector. Another operation that we'll have to do often is multiplying a vector times a constant. And we'll do that with this method called multiply, which takes a single value called a scalar in for input. Then it will just multiply both x and y by that value. We've also discussed how vectors can be characterized by their angle and their length. So we'll have two methods that will allow us to get that information from the vector. So this will involve a little bit of the mathematics we recently talked about. Right? The sine functions and the cosine functions, the tangent function and the Pythagorean theorem. Those will be very useful here. So we'll be able to get the length of this vector, or the magnitude, and the angle that it makes with the x-axis. And there's a strange special case with getting the angle too. One of the possible problems is, what if your vector is 0, 0? Right? In that case, this function will return 0. We'll also use a couple of methods called setLength and setAngle. Those methods will be used to change one piece of information about the vector while preserving the other. So for example, setLength will allow you to change the length of a vector without changing its direction. Similarly, setAngle will allow you to change the direction of a vector without changing its length. And those will definitely use some of the trigonometric formulas we talked about in the previous video. Finally, there will be a toString method. So in case we need to debug our programs or test that they're working, This will take the X and Y coordinate and present a string for us to inspect visually or manually. So those are the classes that we're going to create, or those are the methods and fields we'll create in the vector class. And in the next video, we'll start programming it. Thanks for watching.